Now, we sort of forecast this last week on Footy Classified, and so did a few others. A bit of a tin ear at Richmond and at the AFL. They missed where this was heading.
Absolutely, Ed. We'll set the scene for you first. It's been jarring the way it's played out. Noah Balta was sentenced today in an Albury court. He was sentenced to a community corrections order, a $3,000 fine after pleading guilty for assault in an incident that occurred in late December. But the key here is he must adhere at his home address between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. as a curfew until July 22, 2025. This means, from a football perspective, we know this is bigger than football, but from a football perspective, he won't be able to play 4 matches for the season and possibly another 3 as well. So those 4 are round 7, which is this week, round 11, round 12 and round 19. Can't go into state, he can't play night games. And depending on the floating fixture, Ed, he won't be able to play round 16, 17 or 18 either. So it's a heavy football punishment, but you're right, the way it's played out has been less than ideal on more than one level. A
curfew for a first-up offender who pleads guilty with a pretty good chance of not re-offending. It's pretty hard, isn't it?
Well, I'm not a legal expert, but it certainly took people by surprise.
It's unusual, is what I'm saying.
It took people by surprise.
I'm not talking it down.
No one expected it.
Do you think that this was partly, and we'll never know because the magistrate makes the decisions independently, but some of the comments that were made about poor Noah and he served his time, do you think that if you're a magistrate and you're sitting there, you might just go, no one served their time until they serve my time? Yeah,
that's right. The magistrate said there's no exceptions here. She's not going to listen to Richmond's argument or Noah Balta's argument. In the end, they decided to accept that. There's going to be no appeal. Hirdy, in my mind, Richmond didn't help themselves by playing Noah Balta at the AFL level. This is Noah Balta today in Albury. He didn't say anything. Richmond has released a statement this afternoon, but there's no doubt the Tigers' position on this wouldn't have helped the situation in that courtroom.
I've got no doubt that the way that the Tigers handled it and the way they let him play, and I think the magistrate, we'll never know, as Ed said, but I think the magistrate has decided, well, I'm going to make sure that there is that bigger punishment because everyone's saying poor Noah.
Well, let's have a listen to Adam Uzo, who was interviewed on numerous occasions. We know that Dimmer stuck his nose into it as well, the opposition coach, and a few others along the journey. But let's have a listen to some of the comments made by Adam Uzo along the journey.
The AFL was part of that process when we sanctioned him. Like 6 weeks is a long time for a player to have out, and not only the 6-week suspension. Like, he's been dealing with this for 3 months. We're not going to change our verdict, and like I said, we've worked with the AFL with that, and they're really clear on that. And he's been through a lot, so we're keen to get him in because he wants to earn the respect back of his teammates, his club, and our supporters. So to do that, he wants to get out on the field. But he's been trying to win back the respect of his footy club. He knows he let the club down. He knows he did something wrong, but he's been dealing with that every day, and his performance today was outstanding. So it's a credit to him. We're really proud of him. So from a footy point of view, it was a great result. He played really well. He fixed up the Gold Coast. Richmond has a win, but they have missed the lead on this one.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's harsh. I don't agree with...
Which bit?
Well, the bit is the sentencing. And a magistrate wouldn't take in... I don't think they'd take into your place of work when they're handing down a sentence.
But the way that all the media were talking about, the way that Richmond were talking about, I think that's what we're saying, is that if Richmond had been silent and just gone under the radar and they basically had just not let him play until it was sentenced, I think it could have been different.
Or play VFL.
Yeah.
Yeah, but had, without suddenly being, LA law here, had they been able to turn up today and say to the magistrate, we've taken this absolutely serious, he has gone and done this rehabilitation work, he has not played, even though it's been delayed by 2 weeks, because we want to make sure that you put them in the lay of the law, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Might have had a different outcome.
So you think the sentence would have changed after that?
I don't know, though. We can only surmise. But
you need to do everything you can to get on the good side of the magistrate, and I don't think Richmond did that.
And I think there was more emphasis on trying to stop one-punch issues, and particularly by big guys who are trained athletes. And so the magistrate's given what they gave. So in the end, probably a fair... all things considered, you'd probably take it all, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and he won't play against Melbourne on Thursday night and a few other games after that as well, so we'll drag on.
So it's there. Let's hope there. Good luck to Noah Balta in his rehabilitation, and let's hope that's a lesson for everybody in the community. And also, park that, separate conversation. There's a law and order discussion somewhere down the track that needs to be addressed as well, which is where I think Damien Hardwick was trying to get to that, but maybe not in the right time or place in that situation. OK, let's get on to North Melbourne here. There's been a lot spoken about Alastair Clarkson, and we're going to play some of the grabs from experts a little bit later on. James, I want to come to you on this one. To me, a lot of people talking about Alastair Clarkson gets paid a fair whack of the soft cap. To me, it appeared that North Melbourne went out and they wanted to get their man.
Yeah.
They got him. When he got into the position, Alastair Clarkson's life was completely turned upside down. He had to step away from the game after the allegations of racism at the Hawthorn Football Club. And from there, it's been a hard road for him to recover. Now, that's us from a helicopter point of view looking at this and being a bit compassionate in the situation. Can you take us through some situations that you found yourself in where you went from being James Hird, the man, to then having the world crash down on top of you and trying to coach a footy club?
Yeah, it was not a lot of fun. Obviously, the Clarkson situation, my situation is very different. But in 2013, when the Asada investigation opened, it was interesting. We had a really good year as a football team, and I felt like I hadn't lost my currency with the players, even though going home and trying to deal with the off-field stuff and trying to deal with the Asada investigation was pretty hard. Was very hard to deal with. Took a year off and came back in 2015, and the players were cleared, and we actually had a really good 4 or 5 weeks and felt like a good coach. But when WADA opened back the investigation, I felt like my whole currency with the team was gone, the players. And really, by the end of the year, within 6 weeks, I knew I had to resign because I just didn't have that currency with the players. And I'm not saying that's the same with Alastair Clarkson, but the toll it takes on your family, on yourself, and trying to coach and trying to get the players to do what you want to do and trying to get them on board is very, very difficult. And I feel for Alastair in the fact that, you know, dealing with off-field stuff and trying to be a great coach at the same time is very, very difficult. And I think you can sense that he's not quite back to where he was due to what's happened in the last couple of years.
So when you watch it, what do you think he needs at the moment? What's the support North Melbourne need to put?
Well, he definitely needs support around him. I had pretty good support in the assistant coaches I had in 2013 in particular. They're fantastic assistant coaches. But by 2015, they weren't quite as good. And I think that the distraction you get from all the media around you, you just need to breathe. You need to do what you need to build that relationship back with the players and then let the people around you coach. And perhaps that's not there.
So where did the cracks first show up, and what were they? What were the signs you felt was a bruised ego? Was it when you're delivering messages in key meetings?
It was all of it. It was a bruised ego. It wasn't even bruised ego. It was guilt that you brought your footy club into that place. But it was more about just the distraction of other things and the intense media scrutiny, intense scrutiny on you as a player, as a coach, and on your football club, away from what it was about getting relationships with your players and trying to get them to play the best possible way.
So if Alastair Clarkson has had the wind taken out of his sails, which would be understandable given what he's been through, how does he get back up and become the coach that he once was for North Melbourne?
Well, I think he's got time. I think he's had time. I think he's had that couple of years where no one's really talking about that anymore. And I think it's about him rebuilding his confidence in the club, helping him get the confidence. But the one thing that, and I don't know whether he's lost currency with the players or not, but the one thing that I felt I'd lost in 2015 was currency with the players. Not so much respect, but they just drifted off. And I didn't think I could get that back, and that's why I resigned, because I wasn't able to get that currency or respect back by the players.
It's a brutal country, Australia, at times, if you're a tall poppy, and that doesn't mean you can't be questioned and doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. But when people come for you, it never seems to stop. So let's have a look at just some of the... and these are all fair questions, by the way, so I'm not having a go at anybody for asking the questions. But this is what Alastair Clarkson, and it's a cumulative effect. Let's listen to some of the questions that have been put to him in recent times and the way he's responded.
He's still cutting edge in the modern game, do you think?
Oh, gee, who can ever answer that question? Are you cutting edge in what you do? I don't know. Would you say, oh, yeah, we're right at the top of our game? I'm not the best person to ask. You need to be asking everyone else.
But shouldn't you go, yeah, damn straight I am. I'm absolutely where we need to be.
Maybe, but that's not me.
Oh, wow, we just got smashed in the contest. That is a spanking. The unfortunate part for us is that's probably the strength of our game, and we just got absolutely hammered at a part of our game that usually we fare pretty well in.
So it's a hard one, isn't it, Hirdy? Because if he comes out and says, I'm on top of my game, they're going to say, you're kidding, coach, you've been there 3 years. You couldn't coach his pick to be dirty at the moment. What's wrong with you?
I feel like you're watching a guy there who's lost confidence in. And he's a great coach. He's a 4-time premiership coach, built that Hawthorn team. There's no doubt he is a great coach, and I feel like he's lost a bit of confidence in himself. And interesting to see even Lee Matthews on the couch last night.
Do you want to play that?
Yeah.
Let's roll that first.
If you pay a coach 1.5 million, which is about 20% of your soft cap, you want to be a genius, and no one's that good.
And this is where it starts to hurt, because you start to get questioned. I mean, no one would have said that about Alastair Clarkson when he was leaving Hawthorn. Now it's about...
Right, I remember at the time people saying North Melbourne should pay whatever it takes to get Alastair Clarkson.
$2 million, $2.5 million, paying whatever it takes. And what North Melbourne have done is given him the keys to the football department. Unfortunately for him, and there's a lot of other people it's unfortunate for, this incident's happened, and I think he's lost that currency in the club to do what he needs to do.
Ultimately, as a coach, I think you know when your time's up. I've seen it twice. I think Neil Craig, he knew. We were starting to cop some spankings throughout the year, and he put his hand up. And in the end, it was good to see him take that leap and see the relief come off him. The other one was Pikey at the end of 2019. It's for different reasons as well, Hirdy. But to see him as a person refresh after he made that call was, I know, it was rewarding as someone that valued him as a friend, and seeing that sort of release. And did you get that when you...
Oh, not really. There's a fair bit of criticism still to come. But the thing I'd say about Alastair is I'd love to see him actually say, no, I'm just going to rebuild. I'm going to rebuild this footy club, and I think he deserves the time to do that. Yeah,
so the criticisms of North Melbourne as a club are fair, aren't they, though? Like, they've won, they've won like 7 games in 3 years. They're really struggling. Their percentage is poor. They get scored against easily.
Yeah, but they were no good.
No, I get that. Let me finish.
They were the worst team in the competition.
Let me finish. Yeah. But Alastair Clarkson is an all-time great coach. The big question is, can he get back to what he was? Because his last couple of years at Hawthorn wasn't good either. So what support does he need around him, Ed, to get to that position? And does he have the support at North Melbourne? Does he have the right people around him at the moment?
But is North Melbourne a club that wants to be a big club, though?
Well, no, they don't.
What do they want to be?
No, they're happy being a boutique, unique club which punches above its weight and is different to other clubs. They see themselves with Good Friday, the grand final breakfast, Friday Night Football as a pioneer. They are different to Collingwood.
Channel 7 were a pioneer, and they're run by a bloke called Ron Casey.
That's right.
Who ran both of them.
Yeah, North Melbourne.
But to answer your question, the only way Alastair Clarkson is going to get that team playing well is if he gets the relationships and the currency with his players, that they're all on board. Coaching's not just about X's and O's and about game plan and about what. If they don't truly believe that what he's selling is the right way to go, he won't do that. And that's the only thing that he needs to concentrate on.
We mentioned this last week with Chris Scott. I am a bit critical, though, of some boards at the moment at clubs who are absolutely invisible. And I said this about West Coast Eagles, that when the captain was getting his head kicked in the media, who then had to have a week off because he was so flat. Now, it might have been self-inflicted, but you've got to step up.
You do.
And especially Sonia Hood you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about West Coast Eagles there on that situation, but I'm not saying Sonia Hood, but I'm saying North Melbourne, you've got to actually come up with something. You can't just sit there. If you wait there for the AFL to look after you and for the system to work for you, you'll be there forever.
You're not seeing enough support for Clarko?
No, I'm just saying there are clubs who get out and will fight every single day of the week for everything.
Well, this was the week for North Melbourne to support Alastair Clarkson, and we haven't seen anything yet, in my opinion.
Todd Viney did speak last week supporting
but Todd's his assistant.
And Todd's his head of football.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, he's in the footy department. You're right. The CEO, Jen Watt, the president, Sonia Hood, they all need to support Clarkson in this much as they would support players. All
right, guys, we'll take a break. We've got 2 blokes who know a bit about it.
They do.
Mick Malthouse and Kevin Sheedy, the 2 most experienced people in the history of AFL, VFL football, coming in to talk about Anzac Day first up, and then about football in general from 2 of the greatest minds ever in the game. What a day it has become, and what a privilege it is to have the man who drove the idea from a concept to something that is now one of the great traditions in Australian sport. Kevin Sheedy from the Essendon Football Club tonight. Michael Malthouse, we'll call you from the Collingwood Football Club tonight, although you did coach a Carlton game on Anzac Day in New Zealand at one stage, Mick, but we're about the Bombers and the Maggies tonight. The 2 most experienced people in the history of the game. It's quite incredible. 718 games as coach and 174 as player for Mick for 892. And Kevin, number 1 games player for 251 games, 678 games, 929 career games, and the record equalling 3-time Anzac Day medalist. Rare air here to be, and as a supporter and a lover of the game, it's a privilege. Kev, the idea, I know it sprung from 1977 when you played for the Tigers against Collingwood on Anzac Day, kicked the ball the wrong way at the start of the 3rd quarter, straight to Phil Carman.
Francisburg wasn't on his man. I just thought I'd check him out.
Exactly.
Get on your man. But, you never know what can happen.
But your love of Australian service people, a time when Anzac was on the wane, the Anzac Parade, you went to Bruce Ruxton, you went to Graham Allen and Alan McAllister, and 30 years later, can you believe what you've been a major part of?
Look, I obviously am very proud of what everybody's done. You can have ideas, but a lot of people don't really want to move with them sometimes. And it was a period where I had been thinking about it for quite some time and how to have the courage to ring cold call Mr. Ruxton, and anyway, from 77 to 95. So we did the deal probably in 94.
Yeah.
And we just won the 93 premiership, so we're back up nearly there, playing well as a club again. Like Mick and I were talking about, it's very hard when you're not going to be up on top all the time, obviously. We had a pretty good period there for a while, but look, Bruce Ruxton loved it. He braved for Collingwood, so it was pretty easy to pick Collingwood. But I think Collingwood they have been to the most grand finals. They turn up the most, and they deserve to be the other partner in the game, and that's the way our club looked at it.
Mick, you took the baton from Kevin when he finished, and your love of the service in Australia really shone through, and you took it through to the next period. What did Anzac Day mean to you when you came in? Lee Matthews coached the first, and then Tony Shaw at Collingwood. But when you came to Collingwood, what did Anzac Day mean to you?
Well, I think Anzac Day, for a start, is Australia's greatest day. It's so representative of what we're about. We are multicultural. We know that. We have players that. In fact, I was at the Shrine today, and there was some photographs up, and there was a photograph of a 32-year-old, and he was a banker, and there was a 22-year-old, and he was a farmer, and there was a 14-year-old, and he was in uniform. And I thought, and I was with a couple of people that I've known with the ABC, and I said, he's 14, and he had a uniform on. And so Anzac Day, I really wanted the players to feel it. So we all went to the Shrine the first year and had a history lesson because I was really concerned that we don't teach enough about Anzac Day. I was concerned that we pay a bit of knowledge to the football, but I've said before, look, I can't really remember too many results. You've just shown me Hirdy kicking goals and the best duels there with him and Jimmy Clement playing against each other and Mark McGough and this sort of stuff. But I'll never forget the occasions because that's what we do. We're in that room before the game, and my last message to every player is never embarrass yourself on Anzac Day. How can you possibly even think about it?
Pretty good call. Hirdy, can I ask you, because you've won 3, and so you're a young guy coming through. You know, Kevin went to national service, and Mick, his great tradition in military history. What did it mean for you to run out there on Anzac Day and obviously on 3 best on ground occasions? Yeah, well, Jack, my grandfather, had fought in Papua New Guinea, and Tom, my great uncle, was a bomber pilot in the Second World War, so it meant a lot to the family, Anzac Day, and always has. And I agree with Mick that Anzac Day is Australia's greatest day, and it was all about sacrifice for us. And I don't know about you, Mick, but Sheeds would teach us this day is about sacrifice, not about yourself. It's about your country and about your community. And that really wasn't taught in schools when I was growing up. And so you got to the ground and you actually genuinely felt about sacrifice and community. And Sheeds, you taught us that. How did you teach your players, Mick, about sacrifice in the week leading up? Well, it was basically on that very thing. It's what you can do for your teammate. Yeah. But I also found a book, and it was Fallen. It's called Fallen. And you flip through all the pages, any page, and it starts off Boer War, First World War and Second World War. They're all AFL, they're all footballers that played in Victoria, South Australia, West Australia, Tasmania. At random, I'd open up a page, photocopy it, give it to a player, young player, or give it to all my players first up. Then as the players entered into playing, gave them I said, read this, find out about that young bloke. And Fallen means they never come back. Yeah, yep. So when the players read this, it made them more invested. And they're thinking, like they're talking about players between that age of very young age to into their 40s. Some of them went into their 40s and never come back. But most of them, they're in that book for one reason. They played football. Yep. And that's why it was so relatable for us, because the players who had fallen or had fought were our age when we were playing. And, Sheeds used to give us stories about every year there was a different story of a different soldier, either fallen or come back, and his heroics. And I remember our first child was born on Anzac Day in 1999, so it was even more special. But Sheeds, the Anzac Day was special when we were playing against Collingwood and Tony Shaw was coach and Lee Matthews was coach. But when Mick came along, it seemed to ratchet up a whole nother level. Is that true? Yep. There was a special bond between these two. We were combatants from many, many years ago, even at Richmond on the training track. And we both played in a very similar position, obviously. And Mick brought his gruesome attacking footy
to our club from St Kilda, which is one of the best recruits we've got because he played the premiership. But no, we did ratchet it up for Mick because he's militarised. I am also a bit, and we just like to compete against each other, West Coast and before Magpies. So we've been extremely competitive.
And the Bulldogs.
Well, you nearly got us in 85, sorry.
And the day
I'm glad you didn't play us because I thought, well, you were the danger that year.
The day I realised that Mick was the adversary that he was 2002, when we were favourites going in the game. And by the end of the game, we couldn't work out how we were beaten, but you guys beat us by 20 or 30 points. And this young kid called Mark McGough, I remember the opposition analyst came into the room and talked about the Collingwood, and he said, look, there's this new player playing, his name's Mark someone, and by the end of the day, he had an Anzac Day medal. They're the stories that you love to hear about Anzac Day.
And that was the day that Collingwood set itself up and went on to play in the grand final of 2002, 2003, but that was the day that the Mick Malthouse brand at Collingwood manifested itself.
Right.
So I want to go to you, Mick and Kevin, on this question as we change topics a little bit. We're talking about Alastair Clarkson. The day you gave your first address to the Collingwood players, Mick, I knew that was, as a very young president, I didn't have to worry about the footy department, and you took it and you melded Collingwood into your image and rebuilt the Collingwood Football Club. You did it at the West Coast, when they were just going around and turned them into a team. You did the same at the Dogs. Kev, I'll get to you because I remember Essendon was just a fly-blown organisation until you became the coach and you helped set up GWS. My point to you, Mick, is in these situations at the moment, and you've lived through having to have salary caps, etc., what do you need to do? If you're looking at Alastair Clarkson, as you saw tonight, what does he need at the moment?
Well, he needs a bit of luck for a start off, and I'll start off by saying I can't remember North Melbourne playing Richmond or West Coast at this stage of the year. Have they played them? No. Why? Because I thought the bottom six are supposed to play each other early. It gives you a chance early to give yourself a little bit of confidence. You don't want to be getting knocked over comprehensively. I see a really dejected group of people, and I see a coach who is he's on the verge. Look, I would say he's on the verge of just. It must be just almost getting to the stage where he just doesn't know what to do next. He's got to go back to his own principles. He is a winner. He's got to get his player group, and I spoke to one of these young blokes tonight. Don't drop your shoulders because 2 or 3 goals kicked against you. Let that be inspiration to find your X factor. You take charge of your direct area. No one can control you more than you can control yourself. And if you can rub that off onto your players, at some stage it will turn. Life's about persistence. It's not about you jump on and you get glory straight away. It rarely happens, and if it does happen, it doesn't last. So this is going to be a very deep foundations that he's going to have to lay. But they've got to have more belief at the moment. As soon as it gets turned over, as soon as the scores look horrible, they go to water. And that to me is a resignation. That's what he's got to start to build against.
Kevin, you threatened to make a comeback at Essendon as a player after your first 5 games. You're going to pull the boots on. You had to be talked out of it by the board, but you could tell that
one person, Brian Donohoe.
The Iceman,
listening, Brian.
And he told you, all right, Kev, you're the coach now. But that was the fearsome determination you had to change a culture at Essendon at that stage.
Well, the Bombers had won probably a few years. But they've been to the finals 3 times in the 70s and got beat by 10 goals, 10 goals and 10 goals in the finals. So they never won a final for a decade. And so very consistent, 3 10-goal losses. And we had to change that. And everybody felt they had a good list, and I thought they had a terrible list. I sacked 28 players in my first 2 years. They didn't like that. The people at Essendon. But thank God we got through that period, and we made 83 and got slaughtered by, so, and then we finally got to 2 grand finals and won them. So you have to make tough decisions. And Alastair Clarkson, his experience and knowledge, he's probably one of the best in my modern day, 1960 onwards I go, from 1960 onwards, he's just about one of the quickest 4 premierships in the history of the game. So this guy has come from a little country town, rolls down, he's a tough little nugget, and he takes Hawthorn from a pretty ordinary club at the time to win 4 premierships. Now, if I was North Melbourne, I'd be listening to him wholly and solely, He's got to believe in himself, and they've got to give him confidence to make sure that he has the opportunity to make the correct decisions and not stress him or pressurise him, because that's going to be no value. The deal in the end is, and this is where coaches and clubs were very good to me. They gave me the belief, and then you go along and you make sure it happens. That's confidence right from the board.
And Sheeds, your best attribute as a coach in my mind was you made us believe we could win any game, any quarter, at any time. He's got a young group. How do you do that to a young group?
Well, we won 93. That was probably the youngest team, well, other than the Giants. But, we lost probably 4 of the first 5 games. 20-game season. And we finally got up there, and we played 4 finals games in September in front of 82,000 average, and 40,000 people come. So, and these were young. Fletcher's full back, he's 17. Calthorpe, Olivenshaw, all these boys, McCurry, yourself. I mean, you're very young, but to have a 17-year-old full back is quite amazing. 2 years later, he plays in their first ever Anzac Day game at 19, and Sav Rock was, I think, 20.
Yeah.
So Anzac Day is a great match for young people to grow and people to love our country. But I think the positivity is so important that Alastair Clarkson's given that by everybody around him, because if people believe in you, then you grow.
Well, gentlemen, we could talk all night. I wish we could. As I said, Mick, I was a young reporter. I saw what you did at Footscray. Certainly we watched you turn the West Coast Eagles from being a club that had gone broke publicly, and you turned them into a winning machine. And I've watched firsthand as you turned the Collingwood Football Club from where it was into what it is today. And you've been an amazing servant. And Kevin, for you, everything you've done, and even to this day, you want to get a lotto up.
The lottery is very important, I believe.
Yeah.
It's really a great opportunity for Victorians to actually make it happen. The government, the AFL, all the clubs, because I think too many of our Defence Force people are left high and dry, and it's not good enough, and it's not Australian.
And you've done amazing things for football with so many wonderful aspects, but I hope that when the last post finishes and the national anthem is sung and the crowd goes berserk, as it will on Friday, that you get a shiver up your spine and think, well, that was a pretty good idea.
I think the lottery is more important.
Yeah, well,
that's what I'm after now.
In the lottery of life, you two have provided a couple of winning tickets along the way. Mick Malthouse and Kevin Sheedy, two of the all-time icons of AFL football, and you could go a long way to get a lot of consultants in and not hear the sage advice that might have been given to a number of clubs. Gentlemen, pleasure to have you on here tonight.
Thanks, Ed.
We're going to take a break, come back with more Footy Classified right after this. Hey guys, get ready for this. This is the new show. It's called Players. What about this? Talk about footies away. Ground coming up with another beauty. Jeremy Cameron, the Wizard Watson, and this man, Nick Dacos, doing their own show. It starts next Monday, right after Footy Classified. Also, you'll be able to see it on Footy on 9 on YouTube, nice and early for the kids before they go to bed, and on TikTok and everything else.
I'm
all over TikTok.
I'm sure you are, Ed. I'm sure you are.
What a great idea.
A biscuit, but anyway.
You got your own channel on TikTok?
No, I'm going to have to get one. What do you reckon?
So what are they going to...
Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, you can create your own username. We'll do it for you, Ed. We'll make your own TikTok.
What are we going to hear from the players?
You're going to hear. I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to actually hear from the players. So it's not going to be produced by people and sitting around a desk. They're actually going to talk about what they're into, great segments, their friends, their partners, their girlfriends, the influencers, the game itself, what they want to talk about. It's their show. So
bit more
it's
off-field.
Different players. As I said, Nick Dacos, Wizard Watson, Jeremy Cameron this week. I think we've got the DeConning boys the week after that.
Wow.
And it's their idea. We're just putting it together. It's their show. Beautiful. So fantastic stuff. So 9, not Channel Copycat. They'll come up with it in 10 years' time. Yeah, okay. We'll do that then. All right, let's go back to the footy. What do we got, Tommy? The big story today, Sam Darcy. Now, there's a little bit of a setback today.
Yeah, just a small setback for Sam Darcy today. What I can tell you tonight is he was meant to go in for surgery today on his knee. That's been pushed back a couple of days until the end of the week. Just a bit of swelling, a bit of pain. It's not the end of the world. I went and spoke to a good friend of yours, Eddie, Dr. Peter Larkins, today about Sam Darcy's knee, and this is what he had to say.
When you extend your knee, it's fully straight. But hyperextension is when it goes in a banana backwards and goes back, back, back. So everything at the back of the knee here gets stretched open. The bone fracture can create damage to the bone surface, wherefore the risk is arthritis is there. The bone's got a beautiful protective carpet cushioning coating on it. If that gets badly damaged with the fracture, it could peel off, and so you end up with some raw areas and bone on bone like some players are playing out there now. So the risk of arthritic damage after a bone surface injury inside a joint is quite high. It's pretty risky. There's a lot of important structures at the back of the knee. That's the tiger country for surgeons, so there's arteries. So normally when people have surgery, the approach is through the front of the knee. I believe the approach for this is best done from the side in the back corner. They won't go right through the back of the knee. There's pretty important things here called arteries and nerves. So it's not the standard area that surgeons are operating in all that often. It takes a pretty experienced surgeon to go into this territory.
So the news from Dr. Peter Larkins today as well is he says it's not locked in that Darcy will be able to get back this year, but he's a good chance if his rehab and the surgery goes well. August is the time frame. If he doesn't get back this year, then it's not the end of the world either, because it will give him time to get his knee strong again for 2026.
And who's the surgeon? Which surgeon's operating?
His surgeon's Young.
David Young.
David Young.
Yeah,
that's
well,
right.
veteran, so he's certainly no more experience.
Operated on Luke Darcy as well.
He did Luke's knee 20 years ago. Can I ask you, you mentioned that he was going to have an arthroscope today, but it's been postponed?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Until the end of the week.
But as you said, that's not a bad... That happens a lot.
It's not the end of the world. Yeah, they're looking after him. They're keen to get him under the knife.
Well, you've got to get the inflammation down and things like that.
And no meniscus. People do manage it. You've got to get the body or the quad, the glute super strong, the hip really strong, and you can manage that down the track. And hopefully with stem cells, I've got no meniscus left, and I'm praying that 5 to 10 years down the track, medicine's come a bit further and stem cells might actually help that, James.
Good luck. I've been praying for that for about 20 years. It hasn't come along.
There's a few
it's a bit of a miracle it wasn't an ACL. Dr. Larkin said about 80% of these sorts of injuries end up being an ACL.
Absolutely. All right, Conor Nash, he's up before the tribunal tomorrow.
This is referred directly to the tribunal. 4 or more weeks is what the AFL is looking for.
I think he was a bit clumsy. I don't know he went to knock his block off.
If you actually zoom in, his eyes were on the ball. That's why it's careless, not intentional. Severe impact, high contact. How many weeks should this be at the tribunal, gents?
Well, Scrimshaw got 3 on Ridley for his hit. This is going to be 4+, surely.
That's what
Lobb got nothing because it was unfortunate. And
was a Collingwood player.
Yeah, well, he hit Cox and he missed
it. You get worse
just
off
because Collingwood doesn't squeal.
Not about Collingwood, Ed. What do you think Conor Nash deserves?
Eddie's got his violin out again.
If it was 4 weeks there, Collingwood player 1 maybe.
He gets 3, doesn't he?
Well, the AFL will want 4 or more.
Oh, well, what? That's not like people in football to overreact to things as we move on to the kid
if Voss
who's getting two.
Voss got 3.
Yeah.
I think he gets more than Voss.
Right, OK. Well, I reckon he gets 3, but he'll get 4.
Yeah.
OK, so let's go to the Sydney Swans. Just a quick one on the kid over the fence. Don't tell me, he's been suspended, rubbed there for 2 years, 16-year-old?
Yeah, the SCG has banned him for 2 years following this incident on Sunday. What I can tell you tonight as well is that the Sydney Swans and the AFL were alarmed. They were blindsided by the SCG's decision to do this. They didn't know that the SCG was going to ban this fan who's underage, who's 16 years old, for 2 years. And when that did come out, they were just utterly shocked. They didn't know that was going to happen. The other element here is that the AFL is not going to extend that. They're okay with 2 years. Clearly, I think we all feel that's pretty heavy-handed for a 16-year-old. Wow. The Sydney Swans are still trying to ascertain some information around him, but I think there's a fair degree of common sense around it. And I think if they had their way, they wouldn't be banning him for 2 years like the SCG has.
No, well, I think you see that, and you see that he was remorseful straight away. There was no racism or anything in like that.
And he's a kid. He's 16 years old.
Well, I mean, he's 16 years old. He's still got to have a few brains, but, pull his nose, kick him out, whatever the case may be.
Well, the police gave him a warning, 2 years. But he can still go to NG Stadium, still going to watch footy everywhere else in the country.
Yeah, I know. But
no, I'm with you, Ed. I think it's heavy-handed, and I can't believe the SCG did that without the AFL or Sydney knowing.
I think maybe it's the SCG just flexing their muscles to let the Sydney Swans and the AFL know that they run the ground.
Did they do that?
Well, there's a lot of people marking their territory.
I'm not as cynical as you, Ed, but I'm intrigued to know more
well, you haven't been around long enough. That's why. We'll take a break. When we come back, Coach's Corner next. We're going to go through 3 big games. You two have actually come up with a fascinating insight into the game. Coming up next with Rory Sloane and James Hird, it's Coach's Corner.
25 minutes to make a name for yourself like you never made before.
One of the harder things in football, Rory, is as a coach, is to make a change mid-season, change the way you play. We're going to look at 3 clubs. Melbourne, Adelaide, not so much Geelong the way they changed, but the way they defeated Hawthorn. Melbourne Football Club have been criticised the way they've played their football, the way they've moved the football this year. Simon Goodwin's been under more pressure. The way they moved the football against Fremantle on the weekend was a distinct change, using their numbers, soaking up the defence, giving forward handballs, stuff that they haven't done for a long time. But we see here the way the Melbourne Football Club, Oliver there, get them out, take them around the defence of Fremantle. This is something we haven't been seeing for a long time from Melbourne.
They've been slow off the mark, and it's like Goody just said, take the shackles off. I want you to take the game on, be bold, be brave, use the corridor and take the game on, because I don't know, they were playing too safe and they needed to score. They found it really hard to score, but on the weekend they were on the strongest scoring sides, Hirdy.
And a lot of people would say, why haven't they been doing this earlier? This takes a lot to change. If you're kicking long down the line, you're kicking to your ruckman, you're playing skinny, to then change the style of play, that's why Melbourne haven't been playing. They've been trying to do this, hasn't been working. But this bit of play here, you could just see the intent to handball, get the ball moving quickly.
Well, this is Melbourne of a couple of years ago. Take it on with hands, use that forward handball, be brave again and release someone out who can get shoulders out and attack that last line. Again, clean, quality ball movement and so good from Melbourne.
Great to see Melbourne doing that. The other club that I was really impressed with on the weekend was the Adelaide Football Club. Matthew Nicks has really, has done very well this year, but he's been known this year as an attacking coach. I think over 100 points average for and over 100 points average against. To see what he did against GWS, to have a score of 34 points against, was remarkable.
Yeah, it was going to hurt Nixie too, because he wanted to be more stingy. He knew those first few weeks they were letting up a few too many goals, and it stemmed from some of the back half. And they were taking
this is against Geelong 2 weeks ago, where they're just taking too much. I mean, Hinge here missing the kick. Ball gets turned around. Then Keane here. This is just a kick. It's just taking too much and gets them in trouble.
Well, they don't need to score from that position, Hirdy. Take ground, take the easy option, and then be patient.
We see this week against GWS, against last week's GWS, it's just take what's in front of you, take the easy kick. You can see a distinct change in game style, Adelaide this week. Take the easy one, play more around the boundary, play skinny. You see Josh Worrell here, sees someone come out, plays it skinny, and there's no pretty safe kick. And here, the reason they're going skinny here is they don't want to turn it over in a place to get scored against quickly.
One of Nixie's favourite saying is score it next, not now.
Yep.
So don't rush it. And they don't rush this one. This is what I love the most. Take the time, find that extra one inside forward 50. Allows your forwards to reset, your mids to get up and your backs to set up. And we'll pause here in a second, because this is about 2 minutes down the track. And Adelaide had a great period here of about 5 minutes where they held the ball in. And look, backline's all set up. We've got Riley O'Brien here. He's set up, it's pivotal, and as we play this out, Adelaide's able to apply that pressure that they want to, own some time in the front half. They force a jack kick out from the Giants, which the Giants don't want to do. They want to run in waves. And guess who marks it? Riley O'Brien, who's then going to send it back in to Adelaide's numbers. And big Riley Philthorpe loves these contests, and we saw what he can do when he gets a chance to run and jump at the ball.
And don't underestimate how hard it is to do. Change the way you play mid-season or mid-season. I love the way Goodwin and Matthew Nicks have done that. The next bit of footage I want to show is the masterclass from Chris Scott. Hawthorn loved attacking from the back, loved their quick ball play by foot. But what Geelong have been able to do here is slow the Hawks down. See, they've got to come backwards with the ball. The Hawks weren't doing that the last 4 weeks. Here, look in front of the ground. Geelong players always on the outside, meaning that Hawthorn can't go through the middle and have to kick long down the line, and this is exactly what Geelong want. They get a turnover down the line and return it back for a forward entry.
Well, every good side wants to force that ball. They want to force teams to the boundary, because that's the easiest spot to pin a team in and send them long to a contest. And against Hawthorn, you need this to come to the front, because if Hawthorn get that over the back, they generally score. They get a re-entry off that too.
This is what I really loved about the way Geelong played. James Sicily, one of the best kicks in the competition, he turned the ball over more than I've ever seen him do it. Not because he's a bad kick, but look at the pressure. Look at the pressure down the ground. There's nothing for him to go to. He has to dump it. Ball comes back in. This one here, if we see James Sicily's looking up, there is nothing. There is nothing for him to kick to. He has to invent a kick. And even players of the calibre of James Sicily, when they invent kicks, what happens? They make mistakes, the ball comes back. And I just loved the way both teams played on the weekend. Hawthorn with their movement by foot, but Geelong, the way they slowed them down and were able to get the ball and re-enter. And what a great game it was.
3 good games and 3 good coaching manoeuvres.
Fantastic. Eddie, back to you.
Good on you, boys. Hey, Roy, just before we go, after listening to the coaches speaking, you said in the ad break there's a role for a captain in, say, North Melbourne's position at the moment.
Absolutely. And captain, leadership group, they're so important in that support for a coach that's going through a tough time. And a captain and leadership's role is really to support the coach's message as long as they believe in it, and then relay that out to their players. And they've got to do that. They've got to squash any noise that's around and make sure that belief is still there. But it's so important to have a strong leadership group around a coach that's relaying that message.
And quickly, tomorrow night's game, who wins out of Richmond and Melbourne?
For me, it's a Melbourne victory.
Yeah, I think Melbourne have found their groove. As long as they keep playing that attacking style of footy, Melbourne win.
And Tom, you're a Melbourne man.
I'm last in the tipping. I got 2 last week, so I'm tipping Melbourne.
Okay,
Don't trust that.
And the one that we really want to talk about, can your mob beat my mob?
Absolutely, Essendon by 5 goals. Every 4 years we get a chance.
Spot forward back here, Hirdy.
Why are you laughing?
You just totally undermine everything you've been saying.
Speaking of good coaching,
sitting there and enthralled, listening to the great words of James Hirdy.
We've pumped Collingwood up enough for last
All we've done is talk about Collingwood. All we've done for the last 5 weeks.
Can we get the ladder up? Can we get the ladder up?